That picture, he loved that car. Do you remember when he couldn't drive it and he used to ask anyone to push him in it? In that picture, do you remember how much he loved that bike? He always wanted to take that bike to the park every day. Jermaine was a real boy. He was very active, full of energy, always running around, very much into football. He learned how to ride his bike at 2 years old. He was extremely proud of it. He was so determined, and if he fell off, he'd get back on.
We used to sit down and talk about everything. We were so happy all the time. As a teenager, you think like, oh, this guy is like a big man, you know, telling him what to do. And even though I'm the father, but it's like he was the father telling him what to do.
So that evening, a fight breaks out outside a takeaway shop. The police have described it as a brawl. And Jermaine Cools, 14-year-old boy who lives in the area, enters that brawl.
We got a call, said Jermaine been stabbed. And so my sister said to me, just go.
I just put the phone down and I run to the hospital. I don't even think I checked for cars or anything, I just run.
What happened very quickly and changed the lives of Jermaine's family, his brothers, and the local community, resulting in a ferocious attack with a knife.
Your group were clearly geared up and ready for serious violence. He didn't stand a chance. He must have been terrified and in agony.
I would wake up every morning for a split second, think it was a dream and everything was okay, go and look for Jermaine in his room, and then he would hit me. We were like soulmates. He was my best friend. It was everything to me. Jermaine was born on the 4th of March 2007. It was a Sunday. Julius was at work that day. I was at home. I recognised the pains, but I was quite early along. I was only 7 months. And I remember taking a taxi to the hospital. And yeah, they told me that I was in labour. And I think Julius arrived after a few hours.
It was a happy moment. And everything started going smooth and started going nicely.
I was amazed because he was tiny. Jermaine was only born weighing about 5 pounds. He was really small, very premature, but he didn't require any special care. So I was amazed to see such a small, minuscule baby that was perfect. Jermaine was the completion of our family for us.
Jermaine was the key to the family. We used to do everything together from a baby. He was just a gift in the world. You know, he was just come like a gift to me.
He was a happy boy, always laughing, joking, running around, always going and talking to everybody. He was very, very close to me. He was always everywhere that I went. If I had to leave to go to work and he knew it was coming up to that time, he'd take my shoes and hide them, my coat and hide them so that I couldn't leave. I had to stay at home. He was an amazing child, Jermaine. He was one of the happiest kids you could find.
We used to do a lot of stuff together, but the priority was his mom. He was very, 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 very sensitive when it comes to his mom.
He was very much into his friends, his brother, his older brother. They were together all the time. His computer games, food, eating every hour, yeah.
So it'd be like all the family together, and a Friday night when the school on Saturday, we'd just all be in the room together playing this game, just order food, laugh, joke. That used to be my favorite, always together as a family unit, you know?
All his brothers used to take advice from him. When they have any problem, first person they used to call is him. and he used to give them advice what to do and try to talk to them. Yeah, he was a very, very, very loving little kid.
There's not one day that goes by and he don't call me and be like, "Are you okay? Is everything all right? Or can I come see you?" So he used to always check up on me. That's something about him. Always make sure he checks up on me, you know?
Jermaine was caring. Jermaine was loving. Jermaine was wise. Jermaine was crazy and happy. Jermaine was always the life and soul of any room, anywhere he went. He was loud, confident, but he also knew his limits. He never overdid anything. He was a very unique child.
I went to sleep and I wake up like 2, 3 o'clock in the morning and Jermaine was in the kitchen, sitting down, facing outside. And I said to him, "Why didn't you go to your bed?" And he told me, "I just don't feel like sleeping today, I don't know why." It was around 8:30, 9, I wake up, I look in his room, he was lying down in his room, and I left the house to go to work. That day was just, I just had a feeling I didn't want to go to work. Just like I didn't want to do nothing that day.
It was actually for November a sunny day. We spent the morning together. I think around 12 I had to leave to go to work. He came to the door with me and then he watched me leave. So when I got a little bit up the road and I could still see him outside on the front doorstep watching me leave, I turned and went back because that wasn't something usual. Normally he would just shut the door. And then I told him, "What are you doing? Why are you still standing outside? Go inside and shut the door." And he told me, "Okay, I'll see you later." And I told him, "Yeah, I'll see you later." And I went to work.
I never forget that day. My sister called me around 4:45 because it was a member coming over and he had to go to his grandma. And I called Jermaine like 4:45. I said, "Don't forget you have to go by your grandmother." He told me, "Oh, Dada, I don't feel like going, but I'm gonna go."
I finished work and I'd done some shopping. I bought some stuff for Jermaine. I was walking at the end of the high street, right when my phone rang and Julius had called me to say that he's received a call from Deloney, Jermaine's oldest brother, to say that Jermaine had been stabbed.
It's about 6 o'clock in the evening on a stretch of the London Road near West Croydon Station. It's a really busy street. There's lots of shops and takeaways, lots of life on that street. So that evening, a fight breaks out outside a takeaway shop. The police have described it as a brawl. And Jermaine Cools, 14-year-old boy who lives in the area, enters that brawl. His brother is there with him. And there's CCTV footage which shows this group on the street. And it's chaotic. It's really hard to figure out what's going on.
The scene would have been one of chaos when you've got an incident in terms of knives that are being used.
Jermaine Cools is lying on the floor. He is helped by somebody on the street into a car and he's taken to hospital.
I just left the shop. I didn't care about nothing. I left the shop and I went to the hospital. And we were sitting on there for hours and hours. I keep on asking them if everything's gonna be okay. And they say they don't know. All I can remember is Lorraine is shaking and praying and I don't know.
When we arrived, I hadn't noticed initially, but the front reception desk was full of blood. I think where Jermaine had been standing. And they wouldn't allow me to. They told me there's a team of doctors working on him, that I can't see him. That's when I realised that whatever injuries he's got is serious. Eventually the doctors came and got us. Julius had arrived from his restaurant at that point. They took us into a side room, which made me realise it was even more serious. They explained to me that Jermaine had been seriously injured and that they were working to save his life.
Just a day of, I don't know how to explain that day to you. I wish I could go back to that day and change everything that happened that day, but I can't.
They left 2 police officers guarding the room with us. I wasn't really sure of why. And then eventually the doctors came and advised us that they couldn't save Jermaine and that he'd gone.
I don't know, I keep on looking in the window all that day, still thinking that he's gonna come back, you know? That he's the wrong person, that it's not him.
I think at the moment they told me that my brain didn't digest it. I just kind of went into autopilot. I told them it's okay, it's fine. I didn't show any emotion. I don't think that I actually digested the news that Jermaine had lost his life that night or the next day. I think it took maybe 3 to 4 days for the shock to wear off and for me to actually digest it. It'd gone.
Unfortunately, Croydon in 2021 is described as the knife crime capital because they have a lot of crimes there which involve knife crime, gangs, drugs, stabbings, and unfortunately, murders as well. The victims and the perpetrators generally tend to be quite young. So for the officers to know at that time that they are now dealing with a murder of a young 14-year-old child would have been really hard for them to take.
It's difficult for the police to give information, I guess, to journalists as they're investigating because obviously they need to do their job, so they can't give too much away. So in those early days, the information was quite limited from the police.
It's really important to try to find these perpetrators, to bring them to justice as quickly as possible. One of the main reasons is for the preservation of evidence and to be able to locate the weapon. The other reason is because that individual may have some form of influence on other witnesses. They may fear for their own safety and they will necessarily not want to speak out whilst this individual is at large and out in an area that they know.
Obviously, homicide, murder is always going to be high priority for the police, but particularly in a case like this, where the victim is a child and the perpetrator is still at large. This is a dangerous individual and he could go on to kill again.
I was wondering, why would somebody stab Jermaine? Because he's not somebody, he's not a troublemaker. Why would somebody do that to him?
Within couple of days, well, maybe within 48 hours, the police, they told me they knew who was responsible, that they're pretty sure they know an idea of who did it, that they were looking to locate that person and hadn't been able to so far. They always maintained to me that from the CCTV data that obtained early on, even through to the bits that fed through later, that they saw that Jermaine was an innocent victim. And yeah, obviously the police knew who the murderer was, but then so did a lot of other people locally as well.
Jermaine is only 14. He's not got any gang affiliations. He's not embroiled into that kind of lifestyle. He doesn't even have any known enemies. So from his family's perspective, this is completely out of the blue and is just inexplicable.
If I could have changed something about that night, maybe I'll just pray God that he wouldn't end up in that situation, innit? Because there was no one could control what was going to happen that night. But I had magic to change something about that night. He would probably stay at his house, innit? He wouldn't come outside that night, innit? Just stay home, to be honest.
These pictures, this is how I'll always remember Jermaine. I don't know. He just was so mature and just like a fully developed young man, even though he was only 14. I literally saw him turn into an adult overnight like this and just be happy.
I remember when we used to run all over the place and I used to just try to run after him as well, try to chase him down and just go and hide and laugh at me.
He used to walk everywhere with him, didn't he?
What happened very quickly. From what was a really lovely evening with his two brothers and friends, resulted in young Jermaine losing his life, being stabbed no less than 7 times with a machete-style knife, not any kind of knife that you could just buy off the shelves, an absolutely horrific-looking weapon. And for a young child to be laying on the floor to see what was happening to him must have been absolutely petrifying and terrifying for him, and awful for all the people around him.
It's staggering to see the size of the knife. And then it goes on to the horrible moment where he lunges for Jermaine. And even though you're watching it on screen, you can almost feel the urgency and the weight of his body lunging forth. He just isn't holding back at all.
He lifts it up and then just goes straight into a stabbing motion, which is horrific. He saw that opportunity as soon as Jermaine was down the second time, that he would inflict lethal and fatal injuries onto this young boy. What that says about the killer is that this is a ferocious individual who has absolutely no consideration or concern for what he's about to do. And the fact was that he wanted to cause the most serious of harm to the point of killing young Jermaine.
We now know that he stabbed Jermaine Cools 7 times, once to the chest, and that was the fatal injury.
Jermaine became quite aware quite quickly at a young age that most young boys tend to carry a knife. And he was always had that concern that he could be a victim to a knife. He did have conversations with me about carrying a knife because if not, he'll become a victim to one. But I was really dead set against that life for him. I told him, when you carry a knife, you know, it's going to end in 2 ways, which is that you can be killed by that knife or you can kill somebody with that knife. So I told him that I didn't really want that for him, his life. He understood that.
He used to talk about that all the time. He used to say to us, he's scared. I feel guilty after that happened to him. This is something I have to live with for the rest of your life. It's a pain that'll never go away.
One of the most significant moments in that footage is that you see a figure breaking off from the group.
All he's interested in is not to be caught, running as quickly as he can, and then in the final video you see him actually covering the knife so that it's hidden, which the most likelihood is that he would have probably put that either down his trousers or into his jacket because it's easier to walk with. Using all the information and the intelligence available, the police were very quickly able to identify Marques Walker as the suspect.
I started to try and ask people about who is Marques Walker, and it come up, you know, that he was a gang member. I knew it was a stranger to Jermaine. Jermaine didn't know him. Jermaine's life was a different path of life. He wasn't in the streets, in a gang. He was a family-orientated young man. You know, there wasn't really a way he would have ever have known Marques Walker or any of his associates.
I think the fact that some members of the press and some members of the public default to this idea that any young black man or black boy that's been killed in a violent incident necessarily equates to some kind of gang violence. I think that boils down to systemic racism. And that comes essentially from what what we're fed by the media, I guess, what we're fed in popular culture, in films, in TV programmes.
Jermaine was just a normal kid. He wasn't affiliated to any gangs. He wasn't out there that evening to try and cause any trouble. He wasn't out there involved in any kind of criminal activity. We know that because we know that through the family and through the friends, the local community and through the schools.
The next day after that happened, I saw a social media video circulating that had been taken from a bus of the incident. I then forwarded that to the police. They then confirmed with me what had happened verbally. I think around 5:30, Jermaine had booked an Uber to go to meet his elder brother, Delaney, in London Road. He would have arrived there around 6:10, 6:05. By the time he walked to them, it would have probably been around 6:15, which is where the so-called brawl broke out. Jermaine hadn't moved from Delaney's side the whole time. Marques Walker comes over to where the brawl is happening and pushes Jermaine backwards, and the associate of Marques Walker pushes him fully backwards out of the way onto the floor. Marques Walker runs up from behind Jermaine, withdrawing a massive machete, and repeatedly stabs him from the back. Jermaine rolls away to get away from the injuries, and he just keeps on repeatedly stabbing him. You can see in the CCTV data while stabbing him, he's looking at him, he's specifically aiming for his chest.
The next clip is remarkable. It shows Jermaine walking to the car. He's being aided by a member of the public. We only see the back of him, but he seems okay. And the other striking thing about that bit of footage is this catastrophic event has just occurred that is going to upend everybody's lives. And you can see seconds after the attack, everything just carries on as normal on London Road. People are walking to the shop, people on their phones, cars whizzing by. And in the middle of it all, you've got this 14-year-old boy who's just been fatally stabbed. Doesn't know that he's going to die.
I always knew Jermaine wasn't going to be carrying a weapon or starting a fight. Jermaine had never got into fights. He'd been out countless various times in all different situations and not got into physical fights. So I just couldn't actually believe that somebody could do something like that to Jermaine.
The police now know who the suspect is and they're trying assiduously to find him. But even with their efforts, 6 weeks pass and they come up short. So this must have been quite disheartening and quite upsetting for the family, because there's a chance that they might not find justice. They probably know that the more time that passes, the likelihood of the police catching the perpetrator will decrease.
After like 2 to 3 weeks, to me, it was a bit like everything had kind of died down. There wasn't much calls because there was nothing to update me with. There wasn't really much information fed back. I was quite disappointed that the person that murdered my son was still out there living their life and enjoying their freedom while my son had lost his life at their hands.
Police officers would rely heavily, significantly, on community information, on community intelligence, on witness information. And obviously then you've got the other issues such as CCTV, forensics, DNA, anything that would support the investigation in order to bring the offenders to justice.
How do you plan a funeral for someone that shouldn't be having a funeral? You know, how do you celebrate a life that shouldn't have ended at 14 years old? I remember little snippets of it. The car pulling up here and looking out of the window and knowing that that's not how Jermaine should have been coming home at all. I remember bits and bobs from the service of people standing up and saying various things, relatives sharing their memories. Most of all, I just wanted it to be over with so that I could go home and be alone and try to even begin to process what was going on.
You'll have what you call field intelligence officers, and officers will use a range of tactics. Some of those tactics may be covert and some of those will be overt. They'll be looking at the movements of the perpetrator of Marques, who his associates were, where he might hide out, who he may have gone to, what would his normal movements be.
The police knew who he was because he'd been in trouble many times before. The police know everything about him. They know that boy was violent, that boy was looking to kill someone.
It came to a point where you begin to wonder if they will ever catch him, especially when it had been, 6 weeks down the line. Sometimes I did used to wonder if he would get the opportunity to leave the country and ever face justice. He adored Tupac's music, considering it was not from his generation. Jermaine was inspired to do his own music. Tupac's got quite a lot of philosophy in his songs, and I think that's where Jermaine's interest lied, that it was a bit more about real life instead of talking about just violence and things that are irrelevant.
Well, he liked to sing. He used to write his own songs. He used to make his own beat and sing. In his room, he have his little studio there. So he was very, very, very into music. He have a lot of songs. He started, but he never finished.
For Jermaine, his oldest stepbrother, Delaney, was his idol. He loved Delaney. He loved having a big brother that was a man. And while he was a young boy, he looked to Delaney in a similar way that he looked to Julius to teach him how to be a man. But he also looked upon him in the same way as a companion of his own age. There was a massive closeness between the two of them, considering one is the eldest and one is the youngest, and an age gap of, maybe 12 years or more didn't make a difference. They were always together.
The first time I saw snow, we went out, well, I think it was here, this area here. It was really fun that day, so we were just sledging down the hill, and that. The first time doing that, he taught me how to do it, to be honest. Yeah, I had fun. We had a lot of memories in the short time of his life, 14 years. There's a lot of memories.
After Marques attacked Jermaine, he's seen running from the scene, and he takes a taxi home. And then in the early hours of the morning, he tells his mother that he's going out to get some food. His mother, clearly suspicious, looks on a small iPad or tablet of his, and she sees that there's a conversation between Marques and his friends where they are advising him to discard and lose his clothing and phone because he's been involved in a stabbing. Marques then makes his way to a care home where he is met by a female friend of his, and he spends the night there. In the afternoon, he leaves that location and then he disappears for 6 weeks, where he is hiding away and he's been protected by either friends or others.
In some parts of South London, we know that gang culture has kind of infested the entire community. So what that means is the locals might not report anything to the police, maybe out of fear of retribution from the gangs or out of loyalty to the individuals, or both. So this is a real struggle, it's a hurdle for the police. They often meet this wall of silence because of a general mistrust of the authorities as well. It almost becomes an innate part, a fabric of the community itself. They live by the code, snitches get stitches.
The police eventually caught up with Marques Walker in a really interesting way. They were called out on a completely separate incident, which happened to be the house that Marques Walker was hiding out in. and they actually found him hiding behind a bed.
Initially, Walker tried to fob them off by giving a false name, but eventually he admitted to his identity.
When they arrested Marques Walker, they called me to tell me that they'd arrested him. They told me that they're sorry that it's taken them so long. They called me and said, like, you know, this is a call that we would have liked to have given 5 weeks ago, but we're, you know, calling to tell you he's been arrested. They did tell me that it was an unrelated incident and that he tried to conceal his ID from the police, which I wasn't surprised about any of it because I kind of felt that that would always be the case, that it would be arrested by chance.
Marques confessed to the officers that he was responsible for the murder of Jermaine, but he initially only admitted to the possession of the knife. And then, when the evidence unfolded, he had no choice but to admit to the murder of Jermaine. There was clear evidence of him as being the main perpetrator and the instigator of that attack that was launched on that group in the early stages. And he was advised by his counsel and solicitors to plead guilty because the evidence against him was overwhelming.
I wish it was me that happened to, not him. Because he had his life ahead of him. And just one day I couldn't protect him. You know, and that was the most important day. I wish I could have protected him that day. But I don't know.
Marques is what everybody would describe as a habitual knife carrier, in the same way that any normal person would go out with their mobile phone and wouldn't leave home without it.
You know, what did he think was going to happen to him when he walked out the front door if he had to carry Rambo knives, zombie knives, you know, on his person?
It was clear and evidence that he was a kind of young man who wanted kudos amongst his own gang members by inflicting those type of injuries, by carrying the knives that he carried. The bigger the knife, the more sharper the weapon. The type of weapon they carry gives them more and more kudos and status within the gangs that they work with.
What are they doing to change us to live as a family, as one people? There's no change.
Thank you, Julius. A really important question there from Julius Cools. What are people doing to make a change? A lot of pain here tonight, but also a lot of hope.
Walker didn't actually get a proper trial conventionally because he was trying to use a mental health route to plead diminished responsibility. He couldn't get a psychologist report. So that was why the court process was really drawn out. One of the reasons was because while he was on remand in July 2022, he acquired an attempted murder charge on an attack on a fellow inmate. So that delayed everything in Jermaine's court proceedings.
We know that there was an incident inside HMP Feltham whilst Marques Walker was there. He rallied some other inmates and set out to attack another inmate. He was calling this other inmate a snitch. And they've left this person, you know, with life-changing injuries. They left him lying on the floor, you know, in pools of blood, and they laughed as they were taken away. They mocked this inmate.
I wasn't surprised to hear about that kind of charge or behaviour from an individual of his nature. When we got to December 31st, 2022, I was advised by the family liaison officer that he was advised legally to plead guilty as there's no viable defence for him. And that's why when we attended court on the 9th of January when the trial started, that he pled guilty. He didn't plead guilty out of wanting to, or goodness of his heart, or wanting to take responsibility for his actions at all. It was just because he had no other way forward. The first court appearance he had attended in person, just staring at him, just wondering how an individual like that thinks, why he killed my son. I mean, there is no answer as to why he killed my son. Then there's no justification and there's not an answer that would ever be appropriate. It was only when sentencing was scheduled we were allowed to view all of the CCTV held by the police, as that was what was going to be used to prosecute Marques Walker, that we saw the full CCTV.
It's not very, very clear footage, but it's clear that a young boy is on the floor being ferociously attacked by this 16-year-old who is in possession of that knife.
I think maybe it was watchable because Jermaine didn't lose his life there. He sustained his injuries there, but he made it to hospital. And because the last of the CCTV that you see is he walks to the car, and in that, Jermaine got up and tried to be strong. You can't see pain in his eyes, you can't see tears, you can't see fear. He got up and he tried to be strong and survive and fight. And because of that, it made it easier to watch, you know? I don't think losing Jermaine in any shape or form would have ever been something I could accept. But that definitely makes it a million times harder to know that had Marques Walker have walked away from my son would be here today. And to know that you lost your child, your life, your everything, at the hands of another individual, and just because they felt like it, it's mortifying.
Marques Walker was so ingrained in his own violent lifestyle that after he took the life of 14-year-old Jermaine, whilst in custody and on remand, he produced a drill video which showed his lack of respect, absolutely no remorse whatsoever for the fatal loss of life of another child, by singing and gloating about Jermaine's mother crying and the fact that he'd taken the life of another like it meant absolutely nothing to him.
The fact that Walker actually writes and then records a rap video and he's taunting Jermaine's family about what he's done shows this colossal lack of empathy. Clearly, there's no remorse. It's all bravado. It's all about showing off to your peers. It's all about intimidating your rival gang members and just trying to look like the big man.
Now, you can imagine the stress and the pain for Jermaine's mum and dad on watching that video. Not only have they lost their son, they're now seeing the person who did it, bragging about it, and showing no remorse.
I was angry, infuriated, but at the same time not surprised. I didn't expect much more from that type of individual. So although it offended me, because you've murdered my son and now you're trying to, you know, disrespect his honour and disrespect our family, considering we were innocent victims, was infuriating, but honestly not something that I was surprised by. There's nothing you can say to somebody like that, is there?
I don't feel nothing for him. I just hope what he did to my son, somebody can do that to him. I just hope, I'm praying for this to happen every day, so you can feel it. You can feel what I'm feeling now.
We know that the sentencing is being televised today, and the judge has said that she wants that to act as a deterrent. How do you feel about that? Do you think that will work?
I don't know.
The fact that the sentencing was televised, I think it's really, really important for a number of reasons. Mostly to show young children, young kids that are out there that are carrying knives, the consequences of their actions and what impact it can have when carrying knives.
The judge said in her sentencing that if you're going out with those kinds of weapons on you, you're looking for violence, looking for something to get involved in. Marques and his friends were geared up for serious violence, that he'd had an intent to kill Jermaine Cools.
Marques Walker, you can stay seated until I tell you to stand up. There is no sentence which I can pass which can relieve the pain and loss which you caused. Nothing can bring Jermaine back. No term of years can even begin to compensate for his family's loss. For the murder, detention at His Majesty's pleasure. The minimum term before you will be considered for release by the parole board will be one of 19 years.
No sentence would have ever been enough, and I think the sentencing in general for juveniles is weak. I think there's something that was kind of put together a long time ago when juveniles weren't committing murder at the rate they are now. Not appropriate at all.
He's gonna do the same thing he did. He's gonna do it again, and he's gonna glorify it, because everybody in life have something they enjoy doing. That's what makes him happy. That's his hobby, you know.
2021 was a terrible year for teenage stabbings in London. It was the worst on record. And Jermaine Cools was the youngest. He was 14 years old, and I think sometimes we forget, because we think of these young people as statistics, and we forget that Jermaine has a family and they've been left behind now. Their lives are completely empty.
In the last couple of years, Croydon and the local police and partners are working really, really hard with local communities to eradicate them off gangs, and they still have their challenges, but it is getting somewhat better in Croydon. Here you have Jermaine, who is 14 years of age, and then you've got Marques. He was 17 years of age when he was sentenced, and he will be released when he's 36 years of age. He'll still have